That's just true. Pedro, one afternoon we found a note in our mailbox written in a spidery hand. Pedro, all jobs done, I said. He was offering his services for tree cutting, housework, gardening, painting, decorating, uh, rewiring, and car maintenance, among other things. There was a telephone number at the foot of the list of his advertised accomplishments. My husband was impressed. We should call him, he said. He admired people who went out to find work, who showed signs of ambition. Secretly, I am always rather suspicious of those who claim the ability to turn their hand to everything, and I voiced my reluctance to employ Pedro. My reservation was swept aside when my husband said, I think I'll ask him to cut back those overhanging cedar trees uh, in the driveway. And there was really very little that needed to be done in the garden. But my husband was determined, adding that we had two towering pine trees um, leaning precariously over the terrace and stealing sunlight from four of our olive trees. And these pine trees needed to be cut back too. And so, at my husband's request, Petro arrived, a gaunt man with a lined face and sunken cheeks. Where he was friendly and certainly eager for a few days' employment. The deal was struck. The deal was struck. One of the appointed morning, four other men arrived, parking the oldest, most ramshackle car I had ever seen. They were armed with chainsaws and an arsenal of useless, aging gardening tools, plus a stack of ominously heavy lunchboxes. I was thankful we hadn't asked Pedro to do car maintenance for us. Pedro always arrives last. Then they announced proudly, show us the trees and we will get to work. Having done that, I watched from the window as the men started at the trees and then at one and staring and see as the men stared at the trees and then at one another with mystified expressions which turned to anger. When Petro arrived, parking his own rusty car, the other man rushed as one, waving their tools like swords down the drive and attacked him. I was puzzled as to what was going on, but when they yelled at me, and they hung their heads in shame, gathered up their assorted tools, and said no more. I sat at my desk working in a world of my own. A swab catapulted itself at the glass of the closed windows, trying to find a way out. I unlocked the window, and the insect flew free. Outside, the day was hot, and still it was silence from outside that drew my attention. I hadn't heard the whir of a chainsaw since the men arrived on the pretext of going to collect the mail. I went into the garden where I discovered the quintal at the foot of the sprawling pine trees, pushing and punching one another, fists at the ready, without so much as a single branch trimmed. Is everything all right? I asked needlessly. They turned waving and smiling as though at a picnic. I was thankful they were being paid by the contract and not by the hour. Throughout the morning, the men continued to fight and seemed to agree only when they stopped for lunch. The gist of the argument, it seemed, was not how best to tackle these gigantic trees, but who should be the one to shimmy up the trunks and how they were being paid a pittance for doing such hazardous work. But finally, in the late afternoon, I heard the welcome sound of chainsaws. In the evening, Pedro banged on the door, sawdust stuck on his sweating face, and to say they were quitting work for the day, but I would be back early in the morning. Later, when my husband came home from work, we went into the coolness of the evening garden. I saw butterflies everywhere, rich golden wings tinged with yellow. It brought such pleasure. And then I noticed the damaged olive tree. One of the branches, the Pedro and his men had lopped. I had plummeted to the terrace below and torn away several boughs from one of our olive trees. I walked over to take a closer look. Ripped from the main trunk, fresh, creamy white wood exposed. The limbs were hanging in the evening light like sword silver wings. From paragraph 1, Pedro's note said, all jobs done. How does Pedro emphasizes this in his note? He or Pedro offers, he and Pedro can do several variety of, a lot of, a list of jobs, many services, multitask, and do many jobs, many things, all things, everything, many a range of things you can do is many accomplishments and services for free cutting, housework, etc., and much more, many other things. Why is the writer's husband impressed by Petrus' note? He was impressed by, admired, respected, approved of, thought highly of, liked the people who went out to find work, looked for employment, searched for clients. He was impressed by, admired, respected, approved of, thought highly of, liked the people who showed signs of ambition, drive, motivation, determination to succeed, were enterprising. He was impressed by, admired the way Pedro he looked for work, sought employment, advertised his skills, searched for clients. He was impressed by, admired Pedro's his ambition, drive, determination to succeed. 4a. from paragraph 2 gave the two reasons why the writer did not want to employ Pedro. She was always rather suspicious of those who claim the ability to turn their hand to everything, anything, all jobs. She did not believe those who say they could do everything, anything, all jobs, any job. 2. There was really very little that needed to be done in the garden. The garden needed very little done, and there was not much work to be done in the garden. 4b. What did the writer's husband want Petra to do in the garden? Cut back, prune, trim, chop, and cedar and or pine trees, branches, tree cutting. 5a. From paragraph 3, the footman arrived with chainsaws and an arsenal of useless, aging gardening tools, plus a stack of ominously heavy lunchboxes, gave two reasons why the writer thought the men would not do the job efficiently. Their tools equipment was not good enough for the job, ineffective, in a poor condition, inadequate, pointless, not fit for the job, of little use, not useful, would not work well, hopeless, impractical, not appropriate, and they were not well equipped. And their tools equipment were old, antiqued, ancient, out of date, outdated, worn out, aged. 2. Their lunchboxes showed they would take a long time for lunch and they would spend a long time or their their breaks eating on their breaks eating and they would eat more than work and they were more interested in lunch food uh, than work. They looked like they had come for a picnic and not work. 5b. Why do you think the writer was thankful they hadn't asked Petra to do car maintenance? The Benz, their car was ramshackle, a wreck, in bad condition, in deplorable condition, in poor shape, at ruin, dis, dilapidated, poorly maintained, not cared for, not looked after, neglected. The men, they cannot look after, maintain their car. 6a. From paragraph 4, how did the men show their anger? They attacked, assaulted Pedro. They waved, waving their tools, equipment like swords, weapons, arms, weapons. They waved, waving their tools, equipment angrily, furiously, aggressively. They held their tools, equipment like swords, weapons, arms, weapons. 6b. When Patrick yelled at them, they hung their heads in shame, explaining in his own words what is happening here. When Patrick shouted, bellowed, roared, screamed at them, told them off, berated, scolded, reprimanded them, when Pedro called out, criticized them angrily, loudly, furiously, etc., and they were embarrassed, sorry, regretful, humiliated, abashed, remorseful, apologetic, mortified, and they felt guilty, felt bad, disappointed in themselves, not proud of themselves. Question C, 6C. The writer was puzzled as to what was going on, gave one other word used in the paragraph which conveys the same idea as puzzled, mystified. 7a from paragraph 5, the writer was surprised at the silence from outside. What had she been expecting to hear? The sound, whir, noise of chainsaws, and the sound, noise of the trees being cut. Is everything all right? I asked needlessly. Why was the writer's question needless? The men, they were fighting, pushing and punching one another. It was obvious, clear, evident. She could see that everything was not all right. Something was wrong. It was obvious, clear, evident. She could see that the men, they were fighting, not working. That the men, they were not working. And that the men, they were not doing their job. She could see, saw the answer. She could see, saw the answer. She knew, knows the answer. The answer was obvious. Things were clearly not all right. From paragraph 6. The men were arguing because they were being paid pittance for doing such hazardous work. Explain in your own words the reason for the argument. They were being paid very little, not much, a small amount, barely anything, hardly anything, next to nothing. And the minimum, and their pay was low, inadequate, mean, not enough, insufficient, meager for such a dangerous, perilous, unsafe, risky job. And they could be hurt, injured, harmed. Question 9 from paragraph 1 to 7. For each of the words on or phrase below, circle the letter A, B, C, O, D, which has the same meaning that the word or phrase has in the passage. Accomplishments, skills, gaunt, thin, pretext, excuse, gist, fallen, gist as subject, plummeted, fallen. Question 10. Reread passages 2 and 7, which contain expressions about the trees in the garden. Give the meaning of each expression as it is used in the passage, the effect of each expression as it is used in the passage. Stealing sunlight, meaning the trees were blocking out, taking, taking away, hiding the sunlight, sunlight, sunshine. The trees were not allowing, not permitting, preventing the sunshine to reach the olive trees to shine through. The trees were creating shade, darkness, shadow. The sun could not shine through the trees. The olive trees were not getting sunlight, were in the shade. The trees were stopping the olive trees from growing in the sun. Effect. As if the trees were deliberately blocking the sun, the trees intended to block out the sun. The trees were like robbers, thieves. The trees were crafty, cunning, selfish, greedy. The sunlight was precious. It emphasizes just how dominant, superior the pine trees were. It emphasizes, suggests how vulnerable, powerless, inferior the olive trees were. It emphasizes, suggests the olive trees were victims. 10b. Ripped from the main trunk, line 45, meaning uh, look for a context of either, sorry, except for ripped, ever separated from, cut off, from, torn off, from, broken off, from, pulled off, from, come apart, from, lopped, severed, disconnected, snapped, removed, forcefully, violently. Look for context to the either, the branches, boughs, limbs, each, they, and or from the tree, trunk, each. 10b. Effect. The to show Pedro his men they had been careless, clumsy, unprofessional, bad at the job, im- incompetent, useless, but not real tree cutters, and did a lot of damage. The sight, scene, damage, it was ugly, shocking, dreadful, violent, brutal, dramatic, tragic, devastating, upsetting. The branches, boughs, limbs came apart, were pulled off, were ripped forcefully, violently, aggressively, brutally, cruelly, viciously, without pity.